let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to our first campus update. And for those of you who were here last year, you may remember that we used to call these town halls, but then what we realized was we weren't really having conversation, we were just actually reporting out. And so we went to a format where every other month is a report out. So this is an update meeting. Next month will be a substantive conversation, and it will be around the blueprint, the diversity blueprint that we'll be rolling out. So, and then the November will be a campus update. So we're just trying to get into this cadence of letting you all know what to expect, that we'll just be reporting out a lot of things and then having time at all of them for questions. So there will be time at the end for questions. I want to start with our land acknowledgement. And we recognize that all of us at UWT learn, live, and work on or near the ancestral homeland of the Coast Salish people. In particular, UWT is situated on the traditional territory of the Puyallup. As people on this occupied territory, we have a responsibility to acknowledge the land, the ancestors who have cared for this land since time immemorial, and to acknowledge the histories of dispossession and forced removal that have allowed for the growth and survival of this institution. In light of this history, let us take active efforts to partner with our Indigenous community members and neighbors as we continue our work together as a community of learners, leaders, and educators. Thank you. No one ever wants to come to the front row, but there's lots of seats, so. Lots of space down here. Okay. Okay, as I said, this is an update meeting, so there's lots going on because we haven't been together for a very long time. I think our last campus update was in June. So lots going on. Come on in, folks. Okay, so the first thing is just welcome back, everyone. How's the summer been? Although I will say for some of us, people always ask me, oh, did you get the summer off? I'm like, no. We're not necessarily like the K-12 schools where they shut down the schools during the summer. So there's lots of things that continue to happen, and I know that many of you were here. I hope that you all took some time off because it's going to be a very busy year as we move forward. And I want to start by introducing some of the new leadership team. You know, last year we were running a bunch of searches, and we are at a point now where we actually have some permanent folks in place, and I am super excited about that. So first I want to introduce Andy Harris. Andy, can you stand? Because I'm not sure that everybody has met you yet. Andy Harris is our new Executive Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, so make sure you get a chance to say hello to him and welcome him to campus. Elavi Nadura is our new Vice Chancellor for Equity and Inclusion. And I know that Andy is like in his second or third week, and Elavi is in her second month, so they haven't been here very long, and we were teasing that, you know, they're still new enough that we're still trying to find our way through buildings together. I haven't seen Natalie Eschenbaum yet. Natalie, okay, there's Natalie, who's our new Dean of the School of Interdisciplinary Arts and Sciences. So welcome to Natalie. Sarah Davies-Breen, I saw Sarah early, welcome, is our new Director of Faculty Affairs and Academic Human Resources. And that position was vacant for a year, and we were really, it was very hard. So we are so happy that you are here, Sarah. And then Tina Peterman, who is an ACE Fellow. So the American Council on Education runs a national leadership development program for folks who want to aspire to become college presidents. And fellows spend a year on a campus other than their own shadowing a college president. And so Tina will be with me this year, shadowing, sitting in on meetings, learning how university administration works, although she knows some of it because she is an associate dean at Portland State, so she knows a little bit about administration, but So you all will see her following me or sitting in meetings with me throughout this year. So welcome to Tina as well. Okay, that's not working. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the year ahead, and some of you who might have been in meetings where you've heard me say some of this, so if so, I'm just going to apologize right now for the, I'll probably say it differently. Hopefully I'll say it differently, but the same message. So I'm going to start with this data. And what I'd like for all of us to do is just become familiar with this data. This is what happens to our students. So, and comparing us to Bothell and Seattle. So our first quarter retention rate, and that is students who start with us who come back the next quarter, 92%. But the fall to fall retention rate, meaning students who start one fall and whether they come back the next fall, the latest data has us at 82%, 82.6% of our students come back. And there is an equity gap. I'm trying to see that little tiny number without my glasses, 4.3% difference in underrepresented student first year retention rates and the general retention rate. And then our 6-year graduation rate. So that means students who start with us as first-time freshmen, what happens to them? 75.2% of them graduate within 6 years. And then there is an equity gap there of 6.1%. So I put these numbers up here because we've got a lot of work to do this year. And these numbers for me are motivators for us to do something different, coupled with the fact that our enrollment has declined, 7% last year. We're on a trajectory to have a much larger number if you compare that to fall 2019. So we have lost students in large numbers because the students that we serve here at UWT are the students who have left higher education in large numbers in general, all across the country. So low-income students, first-generation students, students of color. There have been a number of reports talking about these are the students who are leaving higher education, who've left higher education during COVID. And we have a disproportionate number of them here at UWT who have left us. And so this is I actually was thinking about putting this on the bottom of every agenda of every meeting that I have, because this should be our motivation to do better. We have to do better for our students. And so part of that is thinking about who owns this? And I started asking that question, like who's paying attention to these numbers, and who's, and I will say that I think that there are a number of people who care about this. It's in their job description, but there's no one point person that I could say, Mentha, our graduation rates are XYZ, and what are you going to do about it as the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs? That's not fair to her because she doesn't own all of student success. And so I'm just thinking about how do we begin to have a intensive focus on student success this year. So last year we did a lot of work around messaging around you belong here. What does that mean? So you belong here, that message to our students. Well, not only this year, it's you belong here and we want you to stay here and be successful. And so we as a leadership team really have to start to think about what does that mean? How do we define student success as an institution? And how are we working collaboratively to make a difference in those numbers that I talked about? So there are a couple of things that we're going to do differently this year. First is the Seattle and the Bothell campus have student advisory boards that are advisory to the Chancellor and to the President. We don't have one here at Tacoma. So I've looked at the model at Bothell, I looked at the model that I had when I was the Vice President, and my intern last year did some research on just different models at different institutions. And so we have a draft of what that student advisory board might look like here at UWT. And we'll be, when classes start next week, we'll be rolling out a sort of an application process, a nomination process for students to serve on that student advisory board. And the whole purpose is for them to give us direct feedback on their experience here and how we can do better by them, but also tell us what we're doing right. And so I'm a big fan of appreciative inquiry. So we're doing a lot of things right, but how can we improve on that? And we'll hear directly from students. That will include student leadership. So on the Bothell and the Seattle Student Advisory Boards, there are sort of ex officio folks from student leadership who serve on that. There's actually a person in ASUW who is responsible for sort of university affairs and student affairs, so we'll have that person on ex officio. And we'll include students from registered student organizations and other representative bodies so that we can, and then students at large. We want to get a wide variety of folks weighing in on what is happening to them here at UW. The other thing is, I have begun conversations with the vice chancellors and the deans around putting together a student success team. So I mentioned earlier, there's not one person who has student success in their portfolio. It actually lives all over the university. So there are people in the schools who have responsibility for student success. The Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs has people in her team, and there are folks in academic affairs who have student success. So we are putting together what we're calling our student success team. And I have drafted a charge that we're reviewing now with the leadership team and the deans. But the main thing is to really map out, what are we doing now that's working well? What can we scale up? What do we know from the research and literature around student success that we could actually bring to practice here? What data do we need? So you saw I started with data, but there's a lot of questions about, well, when are our students leaving? Are they leaving in their second quarter? Are they leaving, 1 quarter away from graduating? Are there certain fields? Someone asked me a question in one of the faculty retreats. Is there a certain field where we're losing students? And we don't know that data. So I'm asking that group to look at what data we have and what data we need to better understand student success here at UW. And then to report quarterly to the cabinet on what they're finding and what we can do different and what we can do quickly. So one of the things that has already been identified, and I'll say that this is building on work that was done when UW moved to direct admit freshmen. So you all were part of the Gardner Institute freshman experience. So there were a number of reports. There was a big team. So this team's going to be much smaller. But there was like multiple committees. It was a very elaborate structure of work that was done here at UW to look at the student experience and what we could do to better support direct freshmen rather than the adult learners that have been part of our history to that point. So we're building on that work. And one of the things that came out of those earlier reports was we really should get all of our advisors together because we have undergraduate advisors, we have advisors in the schools, we have advisors in special programs, and can we do what other campuses have done and having an advisory council, advisors council that brings people together around professional development, around sort of norming how we do advising on our campus, and actually making recommendations for how we can do better as an institution. So that's one of the things that we were like, we can do that right away. And it's my understanding that the advisors met last week. So we are on our way to having that. We don't know what it's called yet. On other campuses, I think it's called Advisory, Academic Planning and Advisory Councils, APAC. I don't know. We'll leave it to our advisors to come up with whatever name they think works best for them. But the important thing is that they are coming together as a campus-wide unit around advising, and advising that may live in different parts of the institution. So that's going to be pretty exciting and new for us. And then finally, some of you may remember that at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, there was a group on campus. We had a task force on I think it was called Decriminalizing Uwt, and they made a series of recommendations. I met with them when I became the chancellor, and we have done some of the things that that were recommended by that task force. But one of them was to actually have somebody, some council or committee that could continue to track our progress on those recommendations and then actually continue to assess how we're doing as an institution. We looked at urban serving university models, and there are a number of colleges and universities around the country that are reimagining public safety. And we looked at what's happening on the Seattle campus, and there's some reorganization that is happening there around the police moving to a different unit. And having more community-based responses more mental health responses. So we have a campus safety group that is going to meet for the first time tomorrow, I think it is. And so that group has been appointed. They will report directly to me. They'll be tracking all of the recommendations that were in that task force report, and then just continuing to stay on top of safety on campus. This grew out of concern about our relationship with the police, and it really was intense on the Seattle campus where the security there are armed. Our security are not armed. And so we do have a relationship with Tacoma Police Department, and in a way that the Seattle campus doesn't have. So we want to make sure that we're continuing to stay on top of that. So those are new things that we'll be rolling out this year. The other thing that is happening is our strategic plan. So thanks to Joe Lawless and Rachel Vaughn from Business, who was one of the co-chairs, along with Ivan Harrell, the president of Tacoma Community College. And we are almost there with our strategic plan. So the vision, mission, and values did not change from the last plan. And in fact, after a series of focus groups, surveys, and planning sessions, the committee came up with what we're calling 5 strategic priorities. And 4 of those 5 are things that were in the last plan. So focusing on students, advancing student success, continuing our partnership with communities, advancing strong and diverse communities, scholarship, and they changed the language a little bit, and I'm really excited about this new language, which is expand and support teaching, research, and creative innovation. So that's new for us, but we need to think about how we're going to do that. And then, of course, equity and inclusion is always a strategic priority for our institution. And then what they did was they took the last 2 goals of culture and growth and combined them into organizational vitality. And by that, we want to build a thriving community here. We're coming back. I know that when I say that, there are some people who are happy and others who are not, but we're coming back to in-person operations. We really need to think about how we rebuild community after 2.5 years apart. And so we'll have some strategies related to organizational vitality. That will also include fiscal vitality and sustainability, because we've got some issues structural issues in terms of our budget. And so stay tuned for the rollout of the strategic plan. It will include metrics. And so my understanding is they're looking now at a draft of data that we have, and then identifying data that we may need to have as part of our strategic plan. The other update is on budget. So you all may have heard we've been talking about a deficit for all of last year because of our enrollment decline. And the way our budget works, we have sort of 3 major streams of revenue. One is an allocation from the legislature, another is self-sustaining revenue, which includes advancement, and then the other one is tuition revenue. And so we did not collect as much tuition revenue as was projected, and that we built our budget around. So therefore, we had a deficit. And per university policy, any unit that has a deficit for more than 2 quarters automatically goes on what they call enhanced monitoring. And that means that we have a lot more oversight from the Office of Planning and Budgeting and the Provost's office on how we spend our money, how we make decisions around funding. This will last probably 3 years. So just so you all know, it is a lengthy process. It's not a one and done. We actually have to give a plan, and in our plan, we're saying over a 3-year period, we hope to get back to not hope, because hope is not a strategist, just so you all know. After a 3-year period, given our deficit resolution plan, we will be on stable financial footing. And it includes things like really looking at revenue streams that we have and how we can be more entrepreneurial in that. It includes things like really thinking about what can we stop doing. And we've never done that as an institution in our and actually one of the things in the document we said, in our 32-year history, this is the first time in our history that we have had a deficit and that we haven't been growing to have revenue. So this is new for us as an institution. But we will be thinking about what we can stop doing and what reductions, permanent reductions, we can make in our budget as we go forward. So stay tuned. We'll continue to be as transparent about budget decisions. The Executive Budget Committee meets every other week going through the budget, and that includes faculty assembly, the staff assembly, and student leadership with the senior leadership. So last year we had so many searches going on. So I'm really glad to report that this year we're going to have a much smaller number of searches. In fact, I teased last year and I said, I think everybody on campus is on some search committee. But this year, it's not everyone on campus won't be on search committee, but maybe half of you will be. Our Vice Chancellor for Advancement position is still vacant, and we are so fortunate to have Leslie Kincaid, who has served as our interim Vice Chancellor for Advancement. Part of the work that we are doing is with the Seattle Advancement team is we've hired an external consultant to come in and do a review of advancement, some benchmarking, and to really think about, are we structured right, and then how do we build that information into the job description so that when we go out for a new Vice Chancellor, we'll have that information for that person as they begin their tenure. So as soon as that review is done, we'll be working with Seattle because the person reports dually to the Vice President for Advancement at the Seattle campus and to the Chancellor. So it is a dual report, and we will be working collaboratively on that search. So we hope to get that underway this year. Many of you know that Sharon Fott, who was one of our founding faculty members in nursing, and we got to celebrate the 30th anniversary of our nursing program last week. And she stepped down, and David Reyes, who I thought I saw earlier, there's David. Thank you, David. David stepped in and has been our interim dean of the School of Nursing and Healthcare Leadership. We will be working, that is also another position where our nursing program is actually accredited under the Seattle program. So we only have one accreditation as a University of Washington. So the nursing program is a collaborative leadership model with Seattle. So we'll be working in partnership with Seattle to launch the dean search for the Dean of School of Nursing and Healthcare Leadership. And then finally, we love Van Smiley. Who did not love Van? And unfortunately, he had family issues and had to move to Arizona pretty abruptly. And so we have had a search underway, co-chaired by Trish and Leslie, so thank you for that. And we have finalists on campus starting today, I think. So we're very excited to be moving forward. And I've heard that there are outstanding candidates in the pool, so I'm hoping that you all will participate in the process and give us feedback on that so that we can complete that search. So lots going on this year. So I want to ask Mentha, maybe I should stop and say, are there questions for any of the things that I just talked about? I talked a long time. Okay, well, if no questions, we can always have questions at the end. I want to ask Mentha to talk about enrollment because it is such an important part of our planning this year.
Hello, everyone. I am excited to stand before you. So thank you so much, Chancellor Lang, to be able to offer an update as it relates to enrollment. So the first slide, I have 3 things that I would like to share with you. First of all, I stand before you representing the Division of Student Affairs. And this is a group shot from when we gathered together earlier this summer for our retreat. And the Student Affairs team, hopefully you recognize some of the faces on the screen and some of the faces that are here in the audience. And all of our work is really centered around access and belonging and success. And we are really, really excited to be a part of this community and to partner with everyone across the campus as we really enhance the work and strategize about the ways in which we can recruit and retain students and continue to aid them in their pathway to graduation. So this is the Student Affairs team. Now, you may have noticed that we have some guests on campus today. So the Student Affairs team has been hard at work preparing for new student orientation. And at this juncture, we have about 1,500 individuals who are first time in college and also transfer students who are making their way across the campus, visiting various offices, becoming connected, taking care of academic advising, and settling in. So we ask you to be the ambassadors that we know that you are, who are fully committed to the success of our students and really embrace and welcome folks as they're walking across the campus. Not only are students with us today, but we also have family members as well. So they've been visiting our orientation program in person, began on Monday. It will wrap up on Friday. And this is the conclusion of their orientation, which was two-part. It was online and also in person. So again, very, very excited to see 1,500 new students joining us on the campus. So who are those students? Let me provide you with a little bit of information. So under the leadership, new and recent leadership of Shannon Carr, who is our Assistant Vice Chancellor for Enrollment. Shannon, can you wave? So we can do a little better than that. Can you acknowledge? Thank you, thank you, thank you. So Shannon's been with us for less than a year. I think it's 8 months right about now. And she has really had to hit the ground running, becoming acquainted with not only the UW system, all the intricacies associated with enrollment management, and also looking to take our elements, which have been very decentralized, and explore a more centralized model. She's had conversations with the dean, she's had conversations with a whole host of individuals, and that will continue. And I have an announcement towards the end related to that. But this gives you a sense of who's joining us this year. In terms of first time in college, there is shrinkage, as Chancellor Lang acknowledged. It's about 8%, I believe, in terms of the number of first time in college students or first year students. We see a dip too as it relates to transfer students. So as Chancellor Lang noted, there's a whole lot of literature and articles floating in the world about the decline in those students who are choosing to attend college. Students who are stopping out and they're lost. We don't know what's going on in terms of their intent to return to campus. So there's information in the New York Times, there's information in the LA Times, Seattle Times, Chronicle of Higher Ed, Inside of Higher Ed. Every major university, with the exception of the highly selective elite institutions, are struggling in terms of enrollment. So we're not the exception to the rule. But there are some unique challenges to UW Tacoma, and so we will be working and strategizing on how to improve that work. But here's the good news. Our major feeder for transfer students is Tacoma Community College. They are reporting an increase in their enrollment. So if there's an increase there, chances are there'll be more of those students that are interested in coming to UW Tacoma. But we can't rest on our laurels. All of us plays a role in recruiting students to the campus. All of us play a role in creating a welcoming environment. Each and every one of us, the way that we connect with each other, respond to telephone calls, interact with each other, students are watching and paying attention to this, as are their families. So the community that we model is the community that students want to become a part of. So I thank you for the work that you've already done and that you'll continue to do as we mobilize to bring more students into our community. So overall enrollment for autumn 22, we again are projecting a bit of a dip. So we're looking at about 4,618 students. And Joe, you can do the math. That's a percentage of what's the decline total we're projecting?
Total, well, last year's fall enrollment was 5,040.
Yep.
And this number will go just a little bit. Great. So I think my guess would be, if I was pegging it, which is really hard to do before Census Day, would be about 3%.
Yep. So Joe referenced Census Day. So Census Day is when we actually have verification around who's actually here. And we make a public announcement about that. So stay tuned. There will be communication on the UWT line that announces who indeed is really here. You can access that information also on Institutional Research website. So if you haven't gotten in the practice of looking at that data, I would encourage you to do so. I would also encourage you to get into the practice of looking at the Student Affairs website. On the website, there is a tremendous amount of information that we've tried to consolidate so that it's easy to find. So everything from the admissions process. So as you're recruiting students and you wanting them to know what the application deadlines are, with a click of a button, you can find that information. What are the financial aid resources? What's the Husky Promise? How much does it cost to enroll? Click of a button, you can find that information. I'm interacting with a student that has difficulty finding housing or is food insecure. Click of a button, you can learn about our virtual basic needs hub and how we partner with CEI. All of that information is there. So last two things that I'd like to share, because I want to be respectful of time. Stay tuned for a strategic enrollment planning committee. Stay tuned. Get excited about the development and implementation of a strategic enrollment planning committee. This will be a committee that is representative across the campus, involving students, faculty, staff. The deans have already offered input, but how can we take, again, our decentralized model, pull it all together, and look at a way that is much more modernized and looking at how we can indeed make our campus attractive in retaining students. There is an expression that comes from Michael Dolans, who is one of the enrollment gurus in the US, and he says it all the time. I heard it a gazillion years ago, and it still remains true. It's the curriculum that is attractive. That's why we're here, to impart knowledge to students and enhance their intellectual knowledge. So the curriculum is gonna drive the enrollment. Enrollment, as we heard, drives revenue, and revenue drives everything else. So it's all very much interconnected, and that's the way in which we're going to adopt and move forward with our approach. And then finally, save the date. In case you hadn't heard it, the first day of class is September 28th. And that's when we are going to welcome all of our new students, faculty, and staff with a really great celebration on the Tacoma Prairie Line Trail. So it happens during the Husky Hour. New members of our community, we refer to the 12:30 to 1:30 time period. Excuse me, Minika would say 12:30 to 1:20 time period. She's nodding her head as the Husky Hour. So that's the time in which we will come together. Again, there will be remarks from the Chancellor, the remarks from our mayor, remarks from a member of the Puyallup tribe, and also remarks from our ASUWT president. So those are the things that I wanted to bring forward. We're excited to welcome students. We are seeing a dip in enrollment. There will be a strategic approach to that, inviting voices from across the campus, and then join us in launching the start of the first day of the academic year on September 28th. So that's what I had to bring forward. Any questions for me? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mintha. You just reminded me of one of the other things. I talked about the strategic plan, but there's some other planning that's taking place this year, and that is the academic plan. So the faculty will be, the faculty assembly will be working in partnership with the deans and the vice chancellor for academic affairs to do their planning for, what's the curriculum that's going to drive enrollment in the future. I was fortunate last week to be able to do a sort of a community welcome where I talked about our vision for the campus of, at some point growing to 10,000 students, continuing to be a hub of social and economic mobility in this region for students and their families. And so part of that is what are the programs that we need to offer that are going to help be drivers of social and economic mobility for students in our region. And then the other thing that we have to think about is, as we're thinking about being a comprehensive regional university of size 10,000 is, well, what does that mean in terms of buildings? And we'll be working with our real estate advisory committee to really think strategically about our real estate and what's our next building need. I can tell you that even as we are going to do the ribbon cutting on Milgard Hall on November 10th, we've already outgrown that building. So we need to start thinking about what's the next one, what's the timing for that. We are it's in process right now of doing a housing feasibility study. So I'm thinking we'll wrap that up this quarter, where we're actually thinking about what kind of public-private partnership can we enter into to do residence halls and dining facilities on campus. So stay tuned for learning more about that in one of our campus updates as we go forward. So, we're not post-COVID. And for those of you who know, I had it 2-3 weeks ago. I keep saying we're all going to get it at some point. It's not pleasant when you get it, trust me. But it is still with us, and it is one of those things that we still have to pay attention to. The governor's emergency rules are going to be lifted at the end of October, so that's going to change some of what we do. But there are a number of COVID updates as we're coming back to in-person instruction. So, Joe, are you going to go over these things?
The one thing I am glad about is that this information has gotten much simpler over the last 2.5 years. Communicating this over these last couple of years has been challenging. So really it's about masks, vaccines, and testing. Masks will be available on campus. They are right now. The K9 or N95s are at the library and at the Y. And at West Coast Grocery, they have the surgical masks. So you can always get those if a student forgets one, or they can swing by and pick one up. Vaccine availability and expectations is still a University of Washington requirement. And we will have vaccines available on campus. These are, I believe, the boosters, and if you haven't gotten like an initial or your initial, it's the full spectrum. October 4th, 10 to 2 in Dugan. So, and there is a sign up site for that. We will put out the information on all of these, all the links and all the information on this. John and Brian will put out the information after this meeting with these links. So, and then testing availability, and the rapid antigen tests are available at the pantry and West Coast Grocery. And there is a site for that as well. And that link will be in there. And the Husky coronavirus testing, that's what HCT stands for, is back on the ground floor of Tacoma Paper and Stationery. So if you're part of the HCT program, you can pick up your kits there, drop them off there. It's the same as it's been for the last 2 years or so. But they're back. Oh, yes. Sheila just reminded me it's the first vaccine, the University of Washington requirement, and we're not checking for boosters right now. I always like to throw this in there to recognize Stanley and the facilities team that our air is safe, and we're exchanging it at maximum rates and using all the right filters. And then you may have noticed the portable air there, the portable air cleaners, it's behind the piano, that are in rooms as an extra precaution. So, but I always like to bring that up, that our air in our buildings on this campus is safe. And then flu shots. Just can't talk about this without flu shots as well. There are other bugs going around for those of you with kids. I know a lot of my friends with kids, their kids have been coming home with colds, and all the other bugs that are out there are still around. And the flu is still around, and the expectation is that, because last year, remember, we didn't have a real bad flu season, the expectation is that it's going to come back relatively strong. So highly recommended. We will have a clinic on campus October 18th, 9 to noon. I always tell people, I recommend, plan that with your grocery shopping and do it at Safeway. They give you like a $5 off coupon. It's pro tip. But we will have them on campus here as well. And all of these links, all of this information will be in the follow-up piece after today's meeting. So I want to do that quickly because I want to leave time for questions. If you're going to ask a question, because we are taping this, there's Tim. Tim and I both have microphones, and so make sure that you put your hand up. We'll hand you the microphone, and you can ask a question. Oh, that's the #1 rule. I forgot to put it up there. If you're sick, stay home. Yes, absolutely. And if you get a cold, stay home. And with the masks, the recommendation, it's highly recommended in the first 2 weeks of class. I think that should be every year. Just because as we come back together, there's a lot of bugs that we pass around. Highly recommended in the first 2 weeks of classes, recommended after that. So that said, since I'm going to be circulating amongst you, I'm going to put my mask on.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Cindy from the Office of Global Affairs, and I have a question for Chancellor Lang about the enhanced monitoring. You brought up that we're going to be discussing things that we need to stop doing, and I'm curious about what that process is going to look like, and kind of what parameters or values are going to drive that discussion, and then maybe as a follow-up question, how sort of campus as a community will be involved in helping to shape that decision or those decisions.
That's a great question, Cindy. Because we've never done it, we don't have a process. We don't have a process for evaluating, what's working and what's not working, both on the academic side and the administrative side. So this is new for us. And maybe I'll just put a call out there. If there are folks who have some interest in helping us develop the protocol and develop, think about what data we need. I know that Joe this summer worked with the deans and put together just some basic enrollment data by school. And even that was controversial. So, but those are the kinds we're going to have to look at. What is the data telling us around where folks are showing up, where students are enrolling and not enrolling? And, how are we evaluating our programs? And what are students saying about our programs in terms of, what they'd like to see more of, what's useful for them? We just don't have a systematic way of doing what I would call performance management. And so we've got to do that. I mean, we're only 32 years old, so I always say, you have to give us a little bit of slack because we're developing systems that other institutions that are hundreds of years old have had in place. So we're at that point in our history where we've just got to put some systems in place for doing that. So if someone is really excited about that and want to be part of helping me do that, and I'm looking at Tina because Tina actually, as part of her ACE program, had to identify areas where she wanted to learn more, and I was like, "You want to learn more about budget? I got some work for you."
I have a slightly different question. This is Manaka Abraham, Chair of Faculty Assembly. I teach within SET. I saw that you had student success up there. We do have a student success office. Bonnie Becker, I believe, leads it. So I was wondering how that office will be involved in this, or is this a separate initiative?
No. Bonnie's office did lead it. And when I said, we have different units on campus who are responsible for student success, so Bonnie's area is one of them. But we also have a Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. We have a Student Success Center in the Milgard School. We have the First Generation Center. So we have a lot of pieces around campus that are focused on student success that report to different people. Most of them report to our Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and our Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. So they are going to be the co-lead executive sponsors of the student success team. And then those folks like Bonnie and Deidre Raynor and Amanda Figueroa, who actually have responsibility for units around student success and advising, will be on that team. So it's all the people who lead student success initiatives on our campus, and then we're asking the deans to give us the representatives from their schools who are responsible for student success, because some of the schools have more elaborate organizational structures around student success than others. The smaller schools may not have that, but we want representation from every school on the team. And so we're going to start with asset mapping, saying what are we doing already and what's working well and what can we build on. But also, to Cindy's point, what can we stop doing? And I'm going to get on my high horse because you all have heard me say this. We've piloted some things that have been wonderful, but we haven't stopped doing anything. We just keep adding on new things. So the whole idea is to continue to innovate, and when you innovate, you don't keep doing the same old things. So I'm just going to implore us to, as we're thinking about student success, or even as we're thinking about academic planning, what's working well, let's do more of that. If there's some innovations that we want to try, let's do that, but then what is it replacing? So that we're not just continuing to layer on things and never really ask ourselves the hard critical questions about the old things that we were doing. I think there's someone who said the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expect a different outcome. So we can't keep doing the same thing because our numbers that I started with are going to be the same. I have this on my desk now. Yes, as I said, I think this is going to be on the bottom of every leadership team meeting I have, because we have got to do better for our students. The students that we serve, this education that we provide means so much to them. This is their opportunity to have social and economic mobility for themselves and for their families, and that feeds back into our community. So we have to do better.
Well, if there are no questions, I just sent a message to check and see if the ice cream is outside. Oh, there is a question.
More of a statement, sorry. Sorry for a little of the stage fright. I'm usually behind the microphone, not in front of it. Here on behalf of SEIU 925, just wanted to say classified staff at all 3 campuses today are informationally picketing today because we need a wage we can live on, and students deserve a fully staffed university. Today is currently the last day of bargaining. UW has offered only a 3% raise at the bargaining table with inflation and staffing issues. That currently isn't enough. If you're able to join us for an informational picket as well as ice cream.
Great. Thank you, Tim, for that.
Thank you very much.
So, and I believe there's ice cream outside on the Prairie Line Trail. I can't see through walls though. So if you go out there and he's not there yet, I know he was planning on being set up. Hang around. This is our chance to have some ice cream. It's a nice sunny day. Let's reconnect. Great. And do that community building that Sheila was talking about. So thank you.
Great. Thanks everyone for being here. Appreciate it.